Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chel Gimel, and in Yirtz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Pei Beis Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on Pei Beis Amid Aleph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch. Siman Shin Aleph Sif Chaf Tes. Our learning should be Oschus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanesunim Batzara Bashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yirakim Aleihem V'Yitziim Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afelu La'ira Mishibur L'Geula Hashta Bagala V'Zman Kariv and Emar Amein. Our learning should be Oschus for Shalema from Moshe Meir Ben Esther Fradl Tzvi Ben Leah Miriam Chav Adasa Bas Rezel Serel Dvar Bas Shashabina Rivka Bas Shira Leah. They should have Refuah Shalema B'Sarich Shar Chele Yisrael. Our learning should be Oschus for all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way, b'chol makayim shehem. Our learning should also be a schus refuah shalema for Rachel Shalva Bas Itel Freda. Now, some of you may have noticed that I'm saying shir wearing a talis. I don't know how obvious it is, but I figure at least some of you may have noticed that I'm saying shir wearing a talis. Why on earth am I saying shir wearing a talis? The answer is that the talis is the topic of today's shir. We've been discussing in Siman Shin Aleph, malbushim, tachshitim, what you're allowed to go out to Rosh Hashanah Shabbos wearing, what you're not allowed to go out wearing, etc., etc. And the topic of today's shir really is going to be talisim. Now, it's not really the talis that, when we talk about a talis, we talk about the talis that we're wearing by davening. Okay, these seifim in Shulchan Aruch are really talking about a talis, not in the context of davening. It could be a davening talis, but a talis as a garment that they wore. They used the talis as a cloak, and that was one of the garments that they went out with all the time. And now there's a question over here, precisely how are you allowed to wear a talis? How are you not allowed to wear a talis in Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos? So we're going to have to be very careful to describe the various cases given by the Mishnah Berurah exactly the way, given by the Mechaber, exactly the way they were intended. That's why I'm wearing a talis, so that we could do some show and tell. Says the Mechaber Sif Chav Tes. Hayoytze betalis, if somebody goes out on Shabbos wearing a talis, mikupeles al ksefov, and the talis is folded up or rolled up over his shoulders. What does that mean, says the Mechaber? Dahainu, this means, shala'achar shenesana al roishay, after he drapes the talis over his head, magbia shuleha al ksefov, he lifts up the bottom of the talis over his shoulders. Chayiv chatos. This would be an iser daraisa, and if somebody did this b'shoigeg, he forgot that it was Shabbos, or he didn't know that this was aser, he would be chayiv to bring a carbon chatos. This means that this is an iser daraisa. If somebody chas v'chalila did it b'mezid, it would be chayiv skila, chayiv karis. So that's if he did it b'mezid. If you did it b'shoigeg, it would be an issa daraisa, a chiyav chatas. So exactly what is this case? So the way the Mechaber describes the case is, somebody put on his talis. Now I'm going to stand up over here, so my face is not going to be so much in the camera, but it's not my face that you need for this. So he puts the talis over his head. Now the talis is over my head. Right now the talis is draped down on both sides, and it's draped down, going down my back. But now what he does is he takes the talis, he rolls up the whole back of the talis, and he brings up the whole back of the talis over his shoulders. So now I've got nothing going down my back, and the whole talis is around my neck and draped, and it's going down in front of me. Again, it's not down on my sides, and it's not going down my back. It's only up over my shoulders and around my neck. That is the case. That is case number 1 of the Mechabers over here in Sif Chav Tes. And on that case, says the Mechaber, If you go out like that on Shabbos, that is an Issa Daraisa. That would be a Chiyuv Chatos. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is Katan Kuf Yud. Dahainu Shala Achar. Says the Mishnah Berurah, "V'choshken kishe esira legamri me'al atzmai v'kiplo nesan l'akseifei dechayiv." Goes without saying, if you would take a talus, fold up a talus, and then lay the folded talus on your shoulder, goes without saying, of course that would be an Issa Daraisa. Ois Katan Kuf Yud Aleph Chayiv Chatas. So in this first case, it would be an Issa Daraisa. And if you did it b'shoigig, you would be chayiv to bring a karban chatas. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah, she'ein zeh derech malbush, because that is not called wearing a talus. V'hevin le masui. This is called carrying a talus. It's not called wearing a talus. I heard a beautiful, really a spot-on analogy for this from my chaver, old chaver of mine, but also a chaver in Dirshu, Rav Gavriel Fried. Rav Gavriel told me that when he likes to tell his olam about this case in the Mechaber, he said, you know what this is like? This is like when you were in camp or you're in the bungalow colony. Bungalow colony, what are those? Those are out of style. I'm sorry. Did I say bungalow colony? I mean housing complex and summer home. And you go to the swimming pool and you have to bring your towel to the swimming pool. How do you bring your towel to the swimming pool? You roll up the towel and you drape it around your neck, over your shoulders. Is that called wearing a towel? That's not called wearing a towel. That's called transporting a towel. That's what the Mechaber is saying over here. The Mechaber says over here, you take the whole talus, you take the whole back of the talus, you roll it all up, you put it, drape it around the back of your neck and over your shoulders in the front. That's not called wearing a talus. That's called transporting, aka carrying a talus. That would be an Isser Da'araisa. Okay, now let's go to the second case in the Mechaber. So now, 3 lines off the bottom, just into the line, Aval. However, says the Mechaber, Im eina mikupelas al kseifav. If the talus is not rolled up and folded up all the way up to your neck and going over your shoulders, ella rather, mishul sheles berachba, it's hanging down. The width of the talus is hanging down, lemata mikseifav, beneath your shoulders, shari. That would be mutter. Now I'm going to show that to you, but first let's just read the Mechaber here. This is mutter. It's not potter, it's mutter. It's mamish mutter. Shemei akar shu misatef betalisa, because since you are cloaked in your talus, umiskasa by ksefai vegufai, and your shoulders and at least part of your body is covered with the talus, ava pisha miskatzer ktsas milamata, even though you're raising it up and shortening it a little bit from the bottom, mutter, that is mutter. What is the Mechaber telling you? So I'll show you. Imagine the way we typically wear a talus. I'm going to put the talus over my head, right? Now I'm going to take the 2 sides of the talus, and I put the 2 sides of the talus on my shoulder. Right now I'm wearing the talus in the typical fashion. Now, I'm going to show you on the back, right? You see that the talus is ganz long in the back. It's so long that the bottom is even out of the camera. But you know what I'm going to do now? Now I'm going to pull the talus forward. Since I pulled the talus forward, let me pull it even more forward. You see how high the back is now? Now the back of the talus is over here. So I have lifted up the back of the talus so that I have now shortened the talus in the back. Okay? So again, it's not rolled up all over my shoulders and not on the back at all. That was the first case of the Mechaber. In the second case of the Mechaber, it is covering part of my back. It's covering my shoulders, and it's also covering at least part of the back. It's just not as long as it typically is. That, the Mechaber says, is mutter. And the Mechaber said the reason it's mutter is because it's covering your shoulders, it's covering at least part of your body. You did shorten it somewhat, but it's still covering you. So that is mutter. Let's take a look at Mishnah Berurah's Katan Kuf Yud Beis. Lamata mikseifav, hainu afilu emeinu mechasa b'roiv gufay. Even if you adjusted the talus in such a manner that at the end of the day, the talus is not covering the majority of your guf, it's still okay. You're still wearing it in a derech malbush. Says the Mishnah Berurah, "V'yesh machmirin b'davar debe'inon sheyeh mechasa b'rov gufay." There are those that are machmir and say that in order for the talus really to be considered a malbush, it has to be covering rov of the guf. Interestingly enough, that's the position that the Aruch HaShulchan takes by default, but not the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah, by default, the Mechaber doesn't say that it has to be covering rov gufay, so by default, the Mishnah Berurah says over here, and he brings it down. He says, "Kain kasav el yaraba levushe srad." He says it's mashma that way from the gra, but the Taz is machber. The Taz says it has to be covering most of the guf. Now, let's go a little bit further in the Mechaber before we explain anything more here. Now, says the Mechaber on the bottom line, Va'al pizeh, according to what we have now said, mutter lehisatef betalisai takas haglima, you would be allowed to wear your talis under your coat or under your jacket, v'lahaviyai lebeis hakneses, in order to bring it to shul. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Kuf Yod Gimel, V'al pizeh mutter, kavanosai, what the Mechaber wants to say over here is, ba'oifin zeh, according, in this way, to wear the talis in this manner that we just described, the second case of the Mechaber, shemiskatzer tzas milamata, that you're adjusting the talis to make it a little bit shorter, to pick it up higher off the ground by adjusting it. You could do that. The kevan shal kolpanim utafu ad lamata mikseifav, because the bottom line is, it still is covering you, it's covering your shoulders, and it is hanging down somewhat. You didn't bring the whole talis up to your neck and drape it over your shoulders. No, you adjusted the talis, you raised it up so that it's not as long as it was before, but it's still covering at least part of your body. It's still going down. It's still hanging down lower than your shoulders. Even though you're lifting up the bottom, shari it's mutter. Because why are you doing this? You're trying to take your talis to shul under your coat or under your jacket. It's hard to wear the talis adjusted in the normal way, the way we do in shul, where the talis is going to be so long, and then the tzitzits are going to hang down even further. It's hard to do that in the Rishus Harabim. Even if you're wearing a coat over it. Eyes cut and kuf yodalit, v'la'avir lebeis hakneses, kan shayich hagad desifsha achazev, be'argoyel v'eloshabes, l'pirsha groshin tifl kaman, ha'agam v'kayim emedes. I just rattled through kuf yodalit. What the Mishnah Berurah says in kuf yodalit is that if you look over here at the end of Sif Chav Tes, there is no Hagah. The Ramah doesn't say anything here. But if you turn the page and you look at Sif Lamed, there's a Hagah, there's a Ramah on Sif Lamed. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here, this is really a typo. That Ramah that's in Sif Lamed really belongs over here in Sif Chav Tes. So says the Mishnah Berurah. He says that the Gra suggests otherwise. But okay, let's just be very clear on what the Mechaber has told us so far here in Sif Chav Tes. The first case of Sif Chav Tes is somebody put on a talis, he rolled up the whole talis so that the whole talis is brought up to his neck, it's draped over his shoulders, it's hanging down in the front. That, says the Mechaber, is a chiyuv chatos if you go outside like that on Shabbos. Why? Because you're not wearing a talis. You're carrying a talis. Why? Because that's not derech malbush. You know what that's like? That's like taking a sweater and folding up a sweater and putting it on your head. Now that wouldn't be a chiyuv chatos, because that wouldn't be maitzin kederech kol hamitziin. That would be doing it in an abnormal way. But what I mean is, yes, a sweater is a malbush. But if you're not wearing a sweater and you're carrying a sweater, that's an isser, right? So too over here, says the Mechaber, you roll up the talis that way over your shoulder, you're right, the talis is a malbush, but you're not wearing it the way it's supposed to be worn. So in essence, what you're doing is, you're transporting it. That's what you're doing. Now it's interesting that it's a daraisa. So clearly this has to be considered being moitziat kederech kol hamitziin. It has to be that this is not an abnormal way of transporting a talus, which I guess if I use Rav Gavril Fried's analogy to transporting the towel, rolling up a towel and draping it around your neck and down your shoulders, that's a normal way to transport a towel, right? So maybe this was a normal way to transport a talus. So it's not a malbush because you're not wearing it in the way that the malbush is supposed to be worn. You're not using it as a malbush. You're transporting it. And this mode of transport must be considered Moitziin Kedarach Kol HaMoitziin, so that's an Issa D'Oraisa. So that was case number 1. In case number 2, you're also shortening the talus. You're also lifting up the talus higher off the ground. But you're not rolling it up over your shoulders all the way and around your neck. No, you're adjusting it. Now that is something that people do in shul all the time. A guy puts his talus on in shul, and he puts it on, like this, right? And he's davening. And while he's davening, somehow, in the front it gets shorter, and in the back it gets longer. Then he realizes his tzitzis are dragging on the floor, so he pulls it back down in the front. He shortens it in the back. What he's doing is he's adjusting his talus. In case number 2 here in Sif Chav Tes, that's what this fellow is doing. He's wearing the talus, but he's adjusting the talus, and he's making it a little bit shorter so that it shouldn't drag on the floor. Or because it's 80 degrees outside, and he wants to wear his talus to shul, but he says, like those Rabbonim who say that nowadays in Golus, you shouldn't walk outside on Shabbos with your talus out. You shouldn't roast the egin from the goyim. You don't rub it into the Einam Yehudim's eyes that look at me, I'm a Yid. So you don't go outside with a talus on Shabbos. So he wants to put the talus on under his jacket. How do you put a talus on under your jacket? You have to adjust it so that it's short and that it's not really sticking out from under the jacket. So you shorten it up. That's what you do. But you're adjusting the talus, but you're still wearing it in the way that it's worn, because it's still covering up at least part of you. It's hanging down lower than your shoulders. So there we have the 2 cases of Sif Chav Tes. Now let's turn the page and go to Sif Lamed. Sif Lamed is truly speaking, it's what do they say, quartz and sharp. It's a very short and sharp sif that you could write a lot of pages on, because it's a very difficult sif to understand. Says the Mechaber in Sif Lamed, Mutter lotzeis b'rishus harabim, you're allowed to go out in Rishus Harabim, betalis saviv hatzavar, with your talus going around your neck. Okay, didn't we just say in Sif Chav Tes that you're not allowed to do that, right? This sounds very much like case number 1 in Sif Chav Tes. You rolled up the whole talus to your neck, and you have it around your neck going over your shoulders. So Sif Lamed sounds mysteriously like case number 1 in Sif Chav Tes. But case number 1 in Sif Chav Tes is an Issa D'Oraisa. Sif Lamed is mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eiskat Kuf Tes Vav. Betalis saviv hatzavar. You can go out with the talus around your neck. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ve'ein zeh soiser l'sif hakodim. This is not a contradiction to Sif Chav Tes. No, why not? Says the Mishnah Berurah, I'll tell you why. The Mayri b'medinois shenagu lotzes came b'choyel b'bateim. Sif Lamed. Sif Lamed is talking about a region where this is the derech. This is the way they wear a talus when they're inside their house. Oh, so if it's the derech, so then it is a malbush. You're wearing it derech levisha. V'lachein mutter afilu b'mekupel amunach savav hatzavar. That's why it's mutter in Sif Lamed. The derech malbush hu sham, because in those regions that's the derech. V'hu ke'ein sudar she'iter al-shulchan aruch l'kaman b'Sif Lamed daled. This is like an unwrapped turban, or a turban that wraps around your head, and then the ends hang down that we're going to discuss with Hashem in Sif Lamed daled. He brings this down from the Magen Avram and the Tosefes Shabbos. So this is a shtickle of Pella, right? In other words, the Mechaber said in Sif Chav Tes, you're not allowed to roll up the whole talus and put it around your neck. Why? Because it's not derech levisha. If you do it, it's an Issa D'Oraisa. It's a chiv chatas. Comes along the Mechaber in Sif Lamed, says you should know, you're allowed to wear a talus around your neck. Says the Magen Avram and the Tosefes Shabbos, no, it's not a stira. Why isn't it a stira? Because in Sif Lamed, the Mechaber is talking about a region where that's the derech. That's the way they wear a talus when they're at home. So Mebel it's derech levisha and it's mutter. Now, okay, fine. With all due immense, unimaginable respect to the Magen Avram and the Tosefes Shabbos, Obviously, this is tzarech harbe biur, right? This is ikar chasar min hasefer. If that's what the Mechaber wanted to say, then the Mechaber in Sif Chav Tes, I would have thought, would have said, this is an Issa Daraisa, unless you live somewhere where it's the derech. If you live somewhere where it's the derech, then it's okay. So what the Mechaber did. The Mechaber told us in Sif Chav Tes that it's an Issa Daraisa. In Sif Lamed, he says it's mamish mutter. Comes along the Magen Avram, Tesev Shabbos. Oh, it's mutter because it's the derech. We're talking about a place where it's the derech. So obviously this needs a lot of biur. The biur is beyond the scope of what we do here in this shir. There is a Taz who learns a totally different pshat over here in the Mechaber, Ayin Sham, V'timtza Nachas. Okay, now, says the Ramah, top line here on Pei Beis, Amud Beis, Hago. Even if you take the right side of the talus and you throw it over the left shoulder, the derech lelav shaykach, it's the derech to wear the talus that way, v'loy heavy elo lehisnois, and therefore it's a style, it's done to look nice, v'shari, and it's mutter. Now, if you remember, on Amid Aleph, in Mishnah Berurah, Kuf Yodalid, the Mishnah Berurah said that this Ramah really belongs on Sif Chav Tes. So, if you learn this Ramah on Sif Chav Tes, so then what this Ramah is saying is like this. The first case of Sif Chav Tes is in a Daraisa. You're rolling up the whole talis, you're putting it around your neck and over your shoulders. That's not derech malbush. That's a masui. That's an issa daraisa. Second case of Sif Chav Tes is you're not bringing it all the way up to your neck. The talis is still hanging down past your shoulders. You're just adjusting it and bringing it up higher. That's mutter, because that's derech levisha. You're just adjusting it so it shouldn't be so long. Comes the Ramah, and the Ramah says, besides adjusting it, that it shouldn't be so long, in other words, besides adjusting it, right, so you're gonna bring up the talus, so it shouldn't be so long, says the Ramah, besides doing that, what you might also do is, you might take the right side, you'll get me in mirror image, this is my right, you might take the right side of the talus, and you might throw it over the left side, like this. So you've adjusted the talus to make it shorter, and then in the front, you took the right side of the talus and you threw it over your left shoulder. So you're wearing it like this now. Says the Ramah, that's also okay. You know why that's okay? Again, it's okay because that's also derech malbush. That's lihisnois. That's a style. That's to look nice. And therefore it's derech levisha. And therefore it is mutter. Now let's continue the Mishnah Berurah Kuf Tes Vav. Now that we saw this Ramah. Now if you go down into the Mishnah Berurah, in my print it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines down in the Mishnah Berurah, it's cut in Kuf Tes Vav, says the Chavetz Chaim, Umashe Kosav Bahaga Afalpi, this that we have this Ramah here in Sif Lamed, Mekoima Shayach L'Soif Sif Chav Tes, V'chanal. Like I told you earlier, really this Ramah belongs attached to Sif Chav Tes, not to Sif Lamed. However, having said that, says the Chavetz Chaim, Ubebir Gra Mashma, from the Gra it is implied, Shemefarish Tamashe Kosav B'Shulchan Aruch B'Talis Shesavev Atzavar, when the Mechaber said, the first case in Sif Chav Tes, that, 1 second. I'm sorry. Here in Sif Lamed, when the Mechaber talks about the talus over around the neck, Hainu, what he means in Sif Lamed is a little bit different than what he meant in Sif Chav Tes. In Sif Chav Tes, he meant what I showed you earlier. He rolled up the whole talus to his neck, and it's going down in the front, over his shoulders. The Gra learns Sif Lamed different than the case of Sif Chav Tes. In Sif Lamed, the Gra says, what does the Mechaber mean? Hainu sheshnei tzidei ha'elyon. It means that the two top ends of the talus, those are the ends that are in the front, hayamikubatz umunach savev atzavar. Those are around the neck. But the back is hanging down in the normal way. V'lozeh siyam haramah, and therefore the Ramah is coming in Sif Lamed and saying, the afal pisha meniach tzad yamin al kseifa shall smile gam kein shari. Even if you take the right side of the talus and you throw it over the left shoulder, that's also muter mishum the derech lelav shekach v'lisnais, because that's a derech ulefi pirusha shaktin zeh gam b'medina isenu. What did the Mishnah Berurah just say? So again, the way we learned Sif Chavtes, that Sif Chavtes is this. You rolled up the whole talus, you put it around your neck, and you put it down your shoulders in the front. The easy way to learn Sif Lamed is that in Sif Lamed, the Mechaber means the same thing. So why is it Aser in Sif Chavtes and Mutter in Sif Lamed? Because in Sif Lamed, he's talking about a case where this is the way people wear their talesim in their house. Therefore, it's called a derech malbush, and therefore it's Mutter. Comes along the Gra, and the Gra says this is not what the Mechaber means in Sif Lamed. What the Mechaber means in Sif Lamed is you're wearing the talis in the normal fashion. Your mamish wearing the talus in the normal fashion. What does the Mechaber mean in Sif Lamed? He means that you take the top two ends of the talus. Now, what are the top two ends of the talus? It's these two ends that are in front of you. These are the top two corners of the talus. What you did was you threw them around your neck. You did this. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this is how the Gra learns Sif Lamed. Very different than the way we learned it before. The back of the talus now is in the normal way. It's going mamish down my back. It's only the front of the talus that you did something unusual. Says the Gra, this is what the Mechaber means in Sif Lamed. You did this. And the Mechaber is telling you, this is okay. There's nothing wrong with this. This is also considered derech malbush. This is lihis noise. It kind of looks cool. Instead of having your talus hanging down in the front like this, you're very shticky, and you have your talus like this. Okay, kind of looks cool. It probably would stay on better also. So this is lihis noise. This is derech malbush. This is okay. Comes along the Ramah. According to the Gra learns that this Ramah belongs in Sif Lamed. Comes the Ramah, and the Ramah adds a knetch. The Mechaber is saying that you could do this, but the back of the talus is normal. You didn't even make it higher. It's normal. It's hanging down normal. Comes along the Ramah, and the Ramah says, no. You also did this. You took the right side of the talus, and you went like this. So now, not only did you make an adjustment on the top, you made an adjustment on the bottom also. You took the right side and you threw it over your left shoulder. Says the Ramah, that is also okay, because that is also a style, that is also called derech levisha, and that's okay. All right, fine. I think you know now why I'm wearing a talus. We're not done yet. Now let's go to Sif Lamed Aleph. And again here in Sif Lamed Aleph, we're going to have to understand what the contrast is between Sif Lamed Aleph and Sif Chavtes. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to address the contrast between the first case of Sif Chavtes and Sif Lamed Aleph. We're going to have to figure out the contrast between the second case of Sif Chavtes and Sif Lamed Aleph. So let's say what the Mechaber says here in Sif Lamed Aleph. Hayoytze mu'utif betalisoi. Somebody goes out wearing his talus. V'kipla mikanu mikan biyodoi oi al ksefoi. And he goes ahead, let's be literal here, he folds it up on both sides, either on his hands or on his shoulders. Okay, so far, what this seems to mean is like this. Okay, you're going out, mu'utif betalisoi. You're draped in your talus. Now notice that right now, my talus is not on my shoulders at all. I am mu'utif betalisai. I am cloaked in my talus. Now what did he do, says the Mechaber? V'kipla mikanu mikan biyodoi. Now, on both sides, he puts the talus on his hands. I don't think hands means mamish hands, like this, yodoi. Maybe it does. It might mean yodoi. If it means yodoi, it means this. So in other words, before he was like this. Now he's bringing it up on his hands. So now he's like this. Oi al ksefai. Or he brings it up on his shoulder. Now notice that the Mechaber says ksefai, shoulder. He doesn't say shoulders. Okay, let's see. Let's go a little bit further. Says the Mechaber, what's the halacha? Im niskaven lekabetz knofav. If his kavana is that he's doing this likabetz knofav, to gather up the corners of the talis, kedei shelo yikaru, so that they should not become torn, oy kedei shelo yislach lechu, or so that they should not get dirty, aser, this is aser. V'im kibtzam lehisnois ba kiminik anshe hamokim b'malbushan. But if he's doing it to wear the talis in a nice way, the way people in his locale wear their talesim, mutter, then it is mutter. Okay, so what we have to contrast over here is this to Sif Chavtes. In the second case of Sif Chavtes, we said, if you wear your talis, let's look, if we go back to Sif Chavtes to Pei Beis Amud Aleph, the Mechaber in the second case said, Avol im einam bekupelas al kseifav, if the whole talus isn't rolled up over your shoulders, elam mishulshelas barach balamata b'kseifav, if you're wearing it in the normal way and it's hanging down in the back, that's mamish mutter. Does the Mechaber say over there that bekavana talia milsa? Does the Mechaber say over there that it depends why you're doing it? No. The Mechaber in Sif Chavtes says you want to wear a talus in the normal way, like up over on your shoulders. It's fine, as long as it's hanging down on your back. That's called wearing the talus. You shorten it a little bit, that's called adjusting the talus. But that's called wearing the talus. That's mamish mutter. It doesn't say a word over there about it depends what your kavana is. Here in Sif Lamed Aleph, the Mechaber seems to be, at first glance, describing a very similar case. But here in Sif Lamed Aleph, suddenly the Mechaber introduces that it depends what your kavana is. Over here now, it depends what your kavan is. Now, the answer lies in understanding exactly what this case of Sif Lamed Aleph is, and understanding that the case of Sif Lamed Aleph is not precisely wearing the talus in the normal way. Let's take a look here at Mishnah Berurah's Katan Kuf Tes Zayin, which is where the Mishnah Berurah really describes the case. Says the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Kuf Tes Zayin, if your kavana was niskavid lekabetz knofav, if your kavana was that you want to, let's be very careful with the words, you want to gather up the corners of the talis, hainu, what does this mean, says the Chavetz Chaim, shenot al shnei haktzavos shelafanav ula acharav litzad yamin. You take the two corners of the talis, the corner that's in front of you, and the corner that's down your back, litzad yamin, on the right side. Okay, so let's play this out, right? When you wear your talus, okay, wearing my talus, kind of. Hi, welcome back there. My recording blanked out there for a minute, but now it is back. Okay, so I'm wearing my talus kind of in the normal way. Now, I've got one corner on my right side that's in front of me. I've got another corner on my right side that is down behind me. So these are my two right corners. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Shenot al shnei aktzavos, he takes the two corners, Shalafanav, the one in front of him, Ulachrav, the one behind him, Litzad Yamin, on the right side. V'chein, and similarly, he takes Shal Tzad Smoil, the two corners of the left side. Corner number one from the left side, corner number two from the left side. I'm now holding all four corners of my talus. Okay. V'kiplan, and he folds them, v'higbian al yadai, ay al ksefai, and he has them on his hands or on his shoulders. Right? Now, all four corners are over my shoulder. Now, all four corners are on my hands. Okay? So this is what he's doing. V'loy dami l'sif chavtes. Now, I told you that the Mishnah Berurah addresses why this is not similar to the first case of Sif Chavtes. Let's back up for a second, okay? Again, in Siv Chav Tes, we said, you roll up the whole talus, you put it around your neck, over your shoulders, that's a Chiv Chatas. That would be Nisa Daraisa. That's not Derech Malbush. You're not wearing your talus, you're carrying your talus. Over here in Sif Lamed Aleph, the Mechaber, says the Mishnah Berurah, is discussing this case where you have all four corners of your talus bunched together, and either you have them on your hands, like this, or you're taking them and you're throwing them over your shoulder, like that. And the Mechaber says that in this case, it depends why you're doing it. Bekavana tal yamilsa. It depends on your kavana. If your kavana is that this is a style, and this is the way you wear your talus, lots of people who wear the talus this way, then it's mutter. If you're doing it because you want to pick up all four corners of your talus, and you want to hold them like this, and you want to throw them over your shoulder because the guy didn't mop the floor, and you don't want your talus to get dirty, then it's usher. Because then it's not called derech malbush, then it's called carrying it. Obviously, it's not in shul, otherwise you would be carrying it. You're out in the street, and it's muddy, so you're doing this because you don't want your tzitzis to get dirty, you want your towels to get dirty, then that's not derech malbush. Then you're doing it to carry it. Then it's usher. So now, comes along the Mishnah Berurah, and the Mishnah Berurah says, okay, it's usher, fine. If you do it because you don't want your towels to get dirty, it's usher. But the Mechaber doesn't say that it's a chiyuv chatos, so wonders the Mishnah Berurah, what's the difference between Lamed Aleph and Chav Tes? In Chav Tes, you told me if you take the whole talus, you roll it up and you put it up to your neck and over your shoulders. You told me it's daraisa. Here in Sif Lamed Aleph, you're telling me that if I do this or I do this, you're telling me it's aser, but you're not telling me it's a chiyuv daraisa. Why is that a chiyuv daraisa and why is this mutter? That's what the Mishnah Berurah tackles. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this is not like Sif Chav Tes. The Hasam kol shuli atalis shel akarav. Over there, the whole bottom of the talus that's down your back, mikupelas umunach al ksefai. You brought up the whole talus to your neck and over your shoulders. That's a masui. Masha enken hacha. But over here, that's not what you did. Rak hakitzavais mikupalin umunach al ksefov. Over here, you didn't do that. You didn't take the whole back of the talus and roll it up to your neck. You took the four corners. Here I have my two front corners. Now I'm going to grab my two back corners. You took all four corners, and you have them either on your hand, but look at my back. It's still covering my back. Even if I do this, even if I take it and I throw it over one shoulder, I'm still covered in the back. You know what this is more like? This is more like the second case of Sif Chav Tes. So says the Mishnah Berurah, that's why this definitely wouldn't be an Issa Daraisa. That's why it's not Dami Lusif Chav Tes. Mashenken Hacha, the Raka Ktsavais Bukupalun Munachal Aksefov. Over here, it's only the corners that you're putting over your shoulder. Lahaki Raki Suri Ikavalechiyuva. That's why this would be an Issa Darabana, but not an Issa Daraisa, Vigam Toli Bekavanasai. And that's why over here it's Toli and Kavana. So now we understand why this case is not Asa B'Daraisa. But now the question that we have to understand is, why is this case different than the second case of Sif Chav Tes? In the second case of Sif Chav Tes, we said that to do this, to wear your talus in the normal way, and just to adjust it, to raise it up higher off the ground, we said that that's mamish muter, because this is derech malbush. Did we say that it's bekavana tal yamilsa? Did we say that if you're doing it so that the bottom of your talus shouldn't get dirty, it's aser? No. In this case, we don't care why you're doing it. Why? Because this is the normal way to wear a talus. You pulled it up a little higher. That's called adjusting your talus. Some people wear their sweater this way. Some people wear their sweater that way. Some people like the talus adjusted this way. Some people like the talus adjusted that way. So over there, I don't care why you did it. It's a normal way to wear a talus. Over here in Sif Lamed Aleph, where you're doing this funny thing, where you're gathering up all four corners of the talus, and either you're holding them on your hand, or you're throwing them over the shoulder, that's already not so normal. And since that's already not so normal, now it depends what your kavanah is. If your kavanah is to protect the talus so it shouldn't get dirty, that's the Issa D'Rabbanan. That you can't do. If your kavanah is, what do you mean? People wear talesim this way. Then it's okay. Then we're going to call it derech malbush, and then it's going to be mutter. This is the kind of simple way to understand Sif Lamed Aleph. I'm going to call it the Dirshu share. It's true. I'm not saying that we're cutting corners over here. But again, you could go a lot deeper into this, and the Aruch HaShulchan has a whole different way of understanding the whole thing. He has a different way of understanding Chavtes. He has a different way of understanding Lamad Aleph. So there's a lot here that could be spoken out. But this seems to be the pshat in the way the Mishnah Berurah is understanding the Mechaber from Sif Chavtes through Sif Lamad Aleph. Now let's finish out Sif Lamad Aleph. Says the Mechaber, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines down near the middle of the line. V'hani mili b'talisei shalohem. This whole discussion is germane to the type of talesim that were worn back in the day. Shahayu yuria achas mirubas, which was like our shul talesim. It's one square or rectangular sheet. It's not formed into a beged in any way. Avol malbushim didon. But our garments, a jacket, a bekisha, kishu lavush behem, when you're wearing it, umoitzi yadav bitoicha, and your hands, I can take the towels off now, right? When you're wearing a bekisha, right? So I'm wearing a garment that has sleeves, and my hands are in the sleeves. It's wrapped around me. It's buttoned. It's belted. Avo bilmabushim didan kishu lavush behem, when you're wearing them. And your hands come out from it, you could pick up the bottom edge of the bekisha in your hand, and to lift it up, so that the hem of the bekisha should not get muddy. Imagine you're wearing a very long bekisha. Imagine the style became to wear the bekisha very long. It's down almost to your ankles, right? It's a malbush. You're wearing it. You're inside it. Your hands are in the sleeves. They're coming out. You just want to pick up the hem and lift up the hem so it shouldn't get muddy. That the Mishnah Berurah says is mutter. Or maybe you're doing it because you're afraid you're going to trip. You're going up steps outside of Rosh Hashanah, right? So you want to pick up the hem of the bekisha so that you shouldn't trip. Says the Mechaber, that would be 100% mutter. Let's go to the Mishnah Berurah. He's cutting Kuf Yud Zayin. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Avol malbushim didon, by our types of clothing. Over there, the Mechaber says, by our types of clothing, there's no problem if you lift up the bottom of the garment. Hatam, the reason for this is, Ta'akati nishar alav etzem habeged derech malbush, because you're still wearing the beged derech malbush in the normal way, again, using the example of the bekisha. The whole problem that we have all along over here in this sif is, let's say by a talus. If you take a talus and you roll up the talus and you put it around your neck and down over your shoulders, you're no longer wearing the beged. You're carrying it. You're not wearing the talus, you're carrying the talus. But by a bekisha, if you're wearing a bekisha, if your arms are in the sleeves and it's on your shoulders and you're wearing it, just you lift up the bottom, that's not now you're carrying the beged, you're wearing the beged. You're just lifting up the hem of the beged. But there's no question that you're still wearing the beged. That's what the Chavetz Chaim means there. Akati nishar alav etzem beged derech malbush. You're still wearing the beged derech malbush. Having said that, says the Mishnah Berurah, u'mashpa ba'achrayim, it is implied by the words of the achrayim. Daf al pikein, still in all, ein lahakel ela b'magbia kitzas. You should only be makel, even by one of our types of begadim, like the bekisha, you should only be makel to lift up the hem somewhat. Avaloilak bia harbe. Don't lift it up high. Don't take the bottom and lift it up really high, ulesitam tachas hazraya, so that you're holding the bottom of your bekisha up under your arms. That you can do. Denase kimarzev. When you do that, you're making the fabric like a marzev. What's a marzev? A marzev is like a gutter pipe, right? The gutter is on your house. It's two walls and a bottom. When you lift up your beged too high, this comes from the lashon of the Gemara in Shabbos. If you take the hem and you lift it up very high, so look what happens over here, right? You've got the bottom. Here's the bottom. If I lift it up to put it high up under my arm, look at what you have in here now. You have like a pocket. So this is what's meant by like a marzev. It's almost like a pipe. Now, why is the Mishnah Berurah using that lashon? Nasa kemarzev. That's taken for the Gemara in Shabbos, where there's a shita that says that nasa kemarzev is problematic on Shabbos, so that you shouldn't do. So again, So the Mechaber said, Malbushim Didon, our types of garments, you don't really have an issue lifting up the garment because you're still wearing the garment. No one's going to say that now you're not wearing the garment, you're carrying the garment. You're definitely wearing the garment. Having said that, the Mishnah Berurah suggests you should only lift it up somewhat. Don't lift up the bottom of the garment really high to put it underneath your arms. The language of the Mechaber over here was Aram Abushim, where Moitzi Yadav Mitoicha, where your arms come out from the beged. Says the Mishnah Berurah Mashma. The implication of the language of the Mechaber is let's say this is a type of garment where your arms do not come out from inside the garment. You know what he means over here? He means a cape. A beged, like a bekisha, your arms are in the beged and they come out through the sleeves. A cape doesn't work that way. A cape is a garment, but it's just draped over your shoulders. Maybe it has a closure by the neck. It comes around the front, but it's a cape. Your arms are inside the cape. You can pick up your arms, you can extend your arms out of the cape, but it doesn't have sleeves. Your arms are not in the cape. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the language of the Mechaber, where he says that you're allowed to lift up the hem of the garment if your arms come out from inside the garment, meaning it has sleeves, so that you're inside the garment. If it's not that way, if it's a cape, asur lakbiyam, then it would be asur to lift up the bottom to lav derech malbushu, because then it's not a derech malbush. The contrast that the Mishnah Berurah is making is like this. Like I said, the bekisha, you're inside the bekisha. Your arms are in the sleeves. Your shoulders are in the shoulders. A cape is just draped over you. By the bekisha, if you lift up the hem, since your arms and everything are in the bekisha, you're still obviously wearing the bekisha derech malbush. But a cape that's just draped over you and around you, once you pick up the hem of the cape, maybe it's not so much a derech malbush. However, the Mishnah Berurah says you don't have to be machmer on this unless you really lift up the hem high. It's not a problem if you lift it up just a little, so it shouldn't get dirty. Because in that case, even the cape would be considered derech levisha. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This list of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe Shem should send Yeshuas, Refuas, Parnasa, and Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zoichet to see the Biaska El Tzedek, B'mherav Yameinu. Amen. Be well.